All right, welcome to the Civility in the Workplace training here at the City of Pocatello. Just to get started, while a training program on workplace manners and courtesy may seem like overkill, the reality is that rudeness is an epidemic that can have significant cost to your department. What society seems to be gaining in terms of both knowledge and technological advancement, it's losing out on basic social values that directly impact the bottom line. One really good example of this is just social media in general. A lot of people are able to mask themselves behind their electronic devices, and it's easier to be able to speak behind a veil of anonymity, and really you lack some of that civility, and you're able to be more rude and less kind. So just a good quote for thought is, civility is not simply a question of minding your manners, it's also a critical component of a professional success. So keep that in mind every day when you do come to work, that it's important to be civil. So that being said, what is incivility? The definition is behavior that violates workplace norms for mutual respect in such a way that cooperation and motivation are reduced. But in short, incivility is simply rudeness. And rudeness is becoming a cultural norm, but it does not have a place in the workplace. So I've got a video here that we'll watch, just kind of gives you a very exaggerated overview of some examples of incivility.
Great picture of your son. How's he going with these exams?
That's actually my current partner, but thank you.
Pimples are a bit deceiving, you know.
Dave, meet Dr. Peter Cotton.
Whoa!
Hi, Dave.
Hey!
Dr. Cotton is a highly regarded stress and workplace well-being expert.
Wow, you're really good at this stress thing. 5 seconds ago I was relaxed as.
Dave, how's your department?
Yeah, good, I think. Thanks for asking.
I ask because your department suffers an abnormally high rate of absenteeism. Can you explain this, David?
Yeah, well, I was going to ask them, but they're never there.
Dave, according to Dr. Cotton, high absenteeism can be an indicator of workplace stress due to inappropriate behaviour. And it costs billions in lost productivity. You and Dr. Cotton desperately need to find out why the staff aren't happy and fix it. While I call my partner and see if he liked the Justin Bieber concert.
So you're a doctor, are you?
Yes.
Oh, good. I think I've got hemorrhoids. Can you check them out at lunchtime?
Dave, one of the causes of stress in the workplace is incivility.
Incivility? Has that got something to do with the Civil War?
No. It's low intensity, inappropriate behaviour.
Oh, right.
You mightn't even recognise you're being rude, but it can be very hurtful to other people, and it can build up over time and cause bigger problems.
Morning, Dave. How are you?
Oh, no. Gotta go.
Dave, why didn't you say hello?
Oh, that's Doris. You get stuck with her, you can say goodbye to your whole day. You know what I mean?
Do it. A really simple thing, like not greeting your workmates in the morning, can be stressful, especially if you're the team leader. So be civil and say hello, like this. Good morning, Dave.
Oh, now, about that checkup, Doc, can we,
Remember that thing I said about being inappropriate?
So just looking at this month's projections, we're actually in sale.
Oh, sorry to interrupt the party, guys.
Oh, we're just going through the new products day.
Oh, yeah, well, that could take a while for you, because, I mean, you don't normally fire up till lunchtime, mate.
Sometimes Trent never gets fired up at all.
Dave, I've got this idea.
That's great, Jacinta, but, you know, me and the doc here, we're doing some pretty serious work for the boss at the moment, if you get my drift.
Incivility includes interrupting, constant sarcasm, talking over others. So be careful, listen to other people before...
Oh, that is so true, isn't it?
You just spoke over me.
Oh, you spoke over me? Okay, I spoke over you.
Dave, if you set the example, the workers will follow. You can lead change.
What?
No, thank you.
It's not bad advice, actually, Doc. I kind of get this workplace civility now. I might email the boss and let her know, yeah?
Dave, stop. That's a classic mistake. Sending emails in red capital letters can be misconstrued as being angry. Ditch the red and stick with the lowercase.
Are you talking to me in uppercase? Because I never talk to you in uppercase. You know, you're like a typographic bully, you know that?
To help promote civility in the workplace, say hello to workmates in the morning. Don't be sarcastic or talk over people. Don't type emails in capitals. Quickly correct incivility among co-workers. Doing these simple things means there's less chance of more serious issues developing, like harassment or bullying.
We all deserve to be healthy and happy at work. So for everyone here at Inappropriate Corporation, we'll see you next time.
What does this company actually do anyway?
Just a while.
All right, I know that was a really extreme example of incivility, and a lot of times in the workplace, incivility is not quite as blatantly obvious as that, but hopefully that gives you a good understanding of some behaviors that are not okay in the workplace. So let's take just a minute and self-reflect on some things that might be red flags that you are in fact have some incivility within yourself. So just take a minute to reflect on some of these examples. I know that I personally could be accused of a few of these as well. I'm direct and tell people exactly what I think. If I'm annoyed or frustrated, it shows on my face. I'm guilty of that one for sure. I sometimes text or check my phone during a conversation. I occasionally have trouble controlling my temper. I sometimes say negative things about coworkers behind their backs. I frequently fail to return phone calls or respond to email questions. During others' presentations, I'm often engaged with electronic devices. If I'm upset or annoyed, I may stop speaking or become short and snippy. I've been known to criticize people in front of others. I'm part of a group that intentionally excludes some coworkers. I make comments or play jokes that some people could find offensive, and I prefer to address conflicts through email instead of talking. And I just want you to think about that for a minute. One of the biggest things in stopping incivility is really just being able to recognize when you yourself are portraying that behavior. So I'd like you to recall a time when you did feel most respected by a coworker or a superior or a subordinate. And at those times, were those individuals displaying any of the previously listed behaviors? The chances are that they were not. And so just keep that in mind. Each of those actions do have a direct impact on how you're perceived regardless of your intent. So let's move on where we'll discuss some signs of an incivility epidemic. One is when managers scream, shout, insult people, or fail to speak. Coworkers make disparaging comments about one another. People exhibit disrespectful nonverbal behavior. Emails are ignored and calls are not returned. Coworkers stop speaking to each other or they form cliques. People play unwelcome jokes on their colleagues, or coworkers stop sharing information or helping each other. And just to kind of illustrate this example, you've got person one, they make a critical comment to person B. Person B takes offense. B responds by giving a rude response to A. A takes offense. Then A doesn't share any sort of information with B. B blames A for missed deadlines. B barely speaks to A. A refuses to work with B. And all together we have some business problems. So these interpersonal relationships can really have a huge impact on departmental goals and actual work output. So why are we talking about this? Why is it so important? Incivility in the workplace can have long-lasting detrimental effects for any department or business. Workplaces with high incivility also have employees with lower engagement and higher stress, which typically leads to turnover. Turnover is very expensive. Not only do we have to go through the entire recruitment stage again, which is expensive for time and resources trying to find the right candidate, but then you also have to spend the time to retrain an individual after we've already invested in the first person who had left the position. So it really is more lucrative to simply keep the people that you have and help them develop their goals into to the business needs. Looking at a study, it was back in 2000, so the results are slightly dated, but it gets the point across. Based on a study of 200 employees, 22% of employees had intentionally decreased work efforts. 10% had called in sick to avoid the instigator. 28% lost productivity because they spent time at work avoiding the instigator. 37% reduced their commitment to the organization, and 12% had actually quit organizations. So if you're looking at 100 people, 12 people, they're gone, and you have to start over again. That's not good for a culture in any business. So that leads us to discuss what causes incivility and rude behavior, and there's multiple things that do cause these issues. Problematic personality traits, delusions of entitlement, inappropriate role models, non-confrontational managers. And what I mean by that is we don't want a manager who is super aggressive and ready to start a confrontation with everybody, but they're weaker leaders who have a difficulty with addressing issues or having those uncomfortable conversations as issues arise. A dysfunctional culture can also cause incivility, stress, blurred lines for appropriate behavior, long hours or overwork, hurt feelings, passive aggression, intolerance of individual differences, or being in a protected position or position of authority. So let's ask yourself this: is there incivility in your department? There's typically 4 groups of people who do drive incivility, and we'll go through those individually. We've got remote rudeness, dealers in drama, childish adults, or legal risks. Beginning with remote rudeness, these are the individuals that typically hide behind the anonymity of technology, and they avoid interpersonal interactions. You've got your email bombers, or individuals who send insults through email to avoid face-to-face conversations. You've got your cyber junkies, or people who use technology to engage in improper or insulting behavior. And also our non-responders, who are people who inconvenience others by failing to respond to emails or phone messages. They're just hiding behind their electronics as a way to avoid any sort of conflict or confrontation with others. Therefore, they get brave and can potentially act in uncivil ways. Next, we've got the dealers in drama. This is probably the most common form of individual who causes incivility in the workplace, actually. And these are the people that tend to have a tendency to stir the pot for their own personal enjoyment. We've got our gossips, who are individuals who enjoy sharing private or inappropriate information about colleagues. Snobs, individuals who may have insecurities, who make themselves feel important by excluding others. Or our office divas, who are drama kings and queens, who believe their personal needs deserve special attention above others. I know in my personal experience, typically it's those gossips, people who just have a tendency to say too much to the wrong person or not mind their own business, and so they do typically stir the pot and they plant the seed for incivility, and depending on how it is handled, it can actually cause a huge downward spiral within a department. The next we have are childish adults. These are individuals who are simply unable to process emotions and handle themselves like adults in situations. We've got our pouters. Those are fearful people who indirectly express unhappiness by treating others coldly. I know we've all seen those, I'm hoping not in the business setting, but I know with kids in general, pouting is common. You've got your screamers, or immature people who attempt to get their way by throwing tantrums. And our boundary violators, are people who ask intrusive questions or make inappropriate personal comments. So it takes us to another little video just to help get the point across.
Yes, sir. I understand, sir. Thank you, sir. I won't lie to you. It's bleak. I need 2 ideas by 5 o'clock. Scratch that. I need 5 ideas by 2 o'clock. Anyone?
We can extend our sales reach into Canada.
Brilliant, Johnson. You just got 5 minutes with me at lunch. How about investing in online sales capabilities? Even better. Johnson, you're out. Peterson, see you at lunch. Johnson, Miss Tanner is expecting my report. Have you made your changes?
Sure have. Just making one last correction.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
Peterson, report. Here you go. Is this some kind of joke? This is the kind of nonsense I would expect from Johnson. Get back to work. Poopy head.
Stay out of this, Jane?
Oh, I love you too, Jimmy. I didn't write that. I don't love you. I'm happily married. Oh, Jimmy. What the? Would you grow up, Johnson? Uh-huh. What the?
Oops.
Really? Uh-huh. Quit it. Quit it.
Johnson! Grow up! Stop acting like a 10-year-old.
All right, so once again, it's an over-exaggerated example of really how that childish behavior can cause issues at work. It's not needed here. Oops. All right, our last group are the legal risks. They're individuals whose behavior is so inappropriate that they could be considered a legal risk for the city. We've got our frat boys and girls and jokers, or immature people who play inappropriate pranks or make foolish remarks. Our closet bigots, people who direct thinly veiled insults to those in other demographic groups. Or sexual predators, people who engage in offensive touching or make suggestive remarks. Hoping we don't have a lot of those people with us at the city, but you just want to make sure that you're keeping your eye out for that. So really just pay attention. Individuals who do exhibit these types of behaviors are more than likely creating an uncivil environment in your workplace. And it could be intentional or intentional, but it will always cause chaos within the work environment. Just like this clip from The Office. It's out of control pretty quick.
Well, hey, yep, congratulations to you. On what? Come on. Little baby tuna. Little junior Toro.
You know, a baby conceived out of wedlock is still a bastard.
What?
Want me to say it again?
Why did that come into your brain?
Can I talk to you for a second? So they know.
Who did you tell?
I didn't tell anyone. Who did you tell?
Nobody.
Hey, why don't you tell Stanley that I have asthma? Because I don't. If it gets out, they won't let me scuba. If I can't scuba, then what's this all been about? What am I working toward?
What? You think I'm the voice of the Taco Bell dog?
What are you guys talking about? I have a daughter. How could I be a virgin?
Hey, has everyone heard a crazy rumor about themselves today?
Yes.
Yeah, you know what? Let's discredit these rumors.
Yeah, sure, but who's been saying all that stuff?
It's not important, Jim. I just think we shouldn't listen to any of this crap.
Sure, but we should get to the bottom of this. Let's pick a rumor and trace it back to the beginning.
I need to do mine first. Who's been saying that there's another person inside of me, working me with controls?
I heard that from Andy.
I heard it from Aaron.
What?
I heard it from Michael. Michael.
All right, so that just goes to show how quickly gossip can be spread throughout an office, and I know that was not a serious approach to it, but it's a good way to illustrate the idea. So now moving forward, yeah, you might have some incivility in your department. Now what do you do? Well, the first thing you want to do is really just take an honest look in the mirror. Make sure that you look at your own behavior and identify the ways that you might contribute to the workplace incivility, whether you are meaning to or not. Modeling civil behavior is the first step in decreasing incivility. And also you want to make sure that you're increasing accountability. Ensure that offenders actually face consequences. There's nothing that will damage engagement within your team by having positive, hardworking employees see poor behavior allowed without being addressed. So we'll go through some strategies to manage interactions. First off, you want to make sure that you are understanding perceptions of rudeness. For most people, their perceptions are their reality. So whether it's true or not, how someone perceives the way you talk to them or the words that you do say to them, it is absolutely real and valid to them, regardless of how you meant to say it. And so really just keep that in mind as you interact with individuals. It is easy for a simple miscommunication to be perceived entirely differently than it was intended, and you can avoid misperceptions by really building those interpersonal relationships. Start your day off with an actual greeting. A quick nod while staring at your computer is not good enough. I know personally I am guilty of that at times. You know, you come in, you start looking at your emails, you're getting bombarded with what you need to do to get through a day, and you've got coworkers coming in, and so you don't think you're being rude. You're saying hello really quickly, but you're really not giving them the respect or the time to properly greet them and help set the pace for a good day together. You also want to make sure that you're showing respect for your coworkers' property, time, space, and beliefs, and involve your coworkers in daily conversations and ask for their input. It just, teamwork makes the dream work. That being said, regardless of any social situation, disagreements are bound to happen, and so there's two ways really to address them. You can let the disagreement escalate, where you feel angry, you act angry, then I get angry, your anger increases, and we're fighting. That is not a productive way to handle any sort of conflict. On the flip side, de-escalation is the proper way to handle it, where you feel angry, you act angry, however I listen and stay calm, your anger decreases, and we have a discussion, hopefully are able to put together a game plan to move forward. When you are de-escalating a situation, there are some tips for specific language that you want to be using. You want to make sure that you're stating facts and observations rather than emotions and feelings. Also, you want to describe the problem, not a personality. Use I statements and minimize you. Hey, I have noticed that there is an issue here, rather than this is what you're doing wrong. You also want to describe their point of view to check for understanding. Just make sure it's not a simple misunderstanding in the first place before it spirals out of control. Make sure you avoid placing any sort of blame on an individual. Ask clarifying questions to make sure that you do understand the extent of the situation, and then also focus on the future and not the past. The disagreement happened. If you dwell on that, you aren't going to be able to move forward and continue to work cohesively. So just keep that in mind. The flip side of de-escalating language is escalating language. That's when you're really kind of pointing fingers at someone, using words like you should or you must, you lied, this is typical of you, you always or you never, the problem is you, if you don't do this then I'll, you'll never change, you're being hysterical or unreasonable, or really any other condescending remark that could provoke someone. Which leads us to our last video that really just shows how something can escalate so quickly, and it's got a bit of humor to it, so bear with me.
So, why you pick this class anyway? It's pretty hard.
Oh, beautiful view.
All right.
All right. Y'all shut up now. Now, last week, we talked about the physiology of the animal brain as it pertains to aggression. Now, is there anyone here that can tell me why most alligators are abnormally aggressive?
I know the answer to this question. Raise your hand.
Anybody? Anyone? Yes or you, sir?
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Your mama said it. Alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth and no toothbrush. Wow. Anybody else? Yes, sir, you, sir.
Alligators are aggressive because of an enlarged medulla oblongata. It's the sector of the brain which controls aggressive behavior.
That is correct. The medulla oblongata.
Mama?
The medulla oblongata is where anger, jealousy, and aggression come from. Now, is there anybody here who can tell me where happiness comes from? Anyone? All right. Let's hear what Mama has to say on the subject.
Mama say that happiness is from magic rays of sunshine that come down when you're feeling blue.
Well, folks, Mama's wrong again.
No, Colonel Sanders, you're wrong. Mama's right.
Mama's right. Something wrong with his medulla oblongata.
It's okay to fight back. Coach Klein said I could. Mr. Coach Klein said I could. It's fine.
All right, you can see that Professor Colonel Sanders definitely provoked him. And that is not what you want to do in conflict de-escalation. All right, so we'll go over just a couple of scenarios to kind of make you think about different ways that you can approach handling these situations. The first one we've got is one with Ashley and James. Ashley and James both work in accounting. James was hired a few months ago, and Ashley's been with the company for 8 years. James, while being a proficient worker, tends to wait until the last minute to get his work done. Ashley works more steadily and keeps on top of her work daily. Ashley complains that she feels she has to worry now about his work and her own. And because they rely on each other for certain tasks, she's uncomfortable with waiting until an hour or so before a deadline when they're forced to collaborate. Because of the conflict, James is missing more work, and you suspect it's because he wants to avoid Ashley and her wrath. Now, there's a few ways that you can look at this scenario, actually. You can see, like, from the study before, that we've got a higher absentee rate because James is actively avoiding Ashley. I really think that a good discussion is due here between the two of them. It's always better to start a discussion with each other and try to work it out on your own. But if that is something that you're just not comfortable with, you can always feel free to grab a supervisor and have them help mediate or facilitate the discussion as well. The next scenario is with Alice. You've got a fellow worker, Alice, has been reporting to the boss that the progress of your group, Alice has been reporting to the boss the progress of your group in such a way that it appears that she is the central force and the idea person in the group. This is not true, since her contributions have been about equal to others. The other group members don't know she's been advancing her position in the organization at the expense of others. You know what Alice is doing. Alice is slightly above you in rank, and you like her and work well with her. You feel, however, that her easy and regular access to the boss and inaccurate reporting of the group's progress will ultimately undermine the others in the group. Now, this one is a tough situation, simply because there's got to be a lot of emotions in with that one. It's going to be hard to step aside those emotions and have a cool, calm, and collected discussion. But once again, really just opening those lines of communication and talking with de-escalating words and bringing a situation to somebody's attention, and it could help actually strengthen your relationship by working through that together. So it is always difficult to actually have those tough conversations. I always call it getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. It's probably the most difficult task that human beings have, really. If it comes easy to you, then you're lucky. So really what you want to do is want to make sure that you're preparing before the conversation. Focus on your goal and take the time to prepare. Make sure that you're setting aside emotions and personal feelings. Those will always get in the way of anything that's productive. Make sure within your opening statement that you're explaining the business problem. You know, this is a work issue. Personalities do have a tendency to collide at some point, so you have to make sure that you're focusing on why your work or why the business is being affected rather than you personally. State what you want or need, and also request them to respond back to you, and make sure that you guys can actually discuss the situation. You want to make sure that you're actively listening to their responses as well. Share your views and discuss options, and also agree on the next steps and how to move forward and move past this. So for some tips for better listening, you want to make sure that you're listening with the basic courtesies that you would like to receive. Don't interrupt the individual when they're talking to you. reflect back the understanding of views, check for understanding, ask clarifying questions, really listen, and don't respond until you've truly heard the other person. I know I am personally guilty of this. Sometimes I'll be listening to somebody and I'll be so busy preparing what I'm going to say back to them that I miss like the last half of their message, and really I'm not giving them a proper opportunity to express themselves. And yeah, it's really difficult at times. So keep that in mind as you are actively listening to others, and also make sure that you're using those I messages just the same as the de-escalation technique, rather than blaming and pointing a finger at them. You also want to make sure that you are being a better bystander. Stop incivility in its tracks by making a personal contribution to a more civil workplace. Refuse to tolerate rude and inappropriate behavior. Speak up when you see something wrong. This can be really difficult, and I do understand that, but it's everybody's responsibility to make sure that we do work in a civil environment. Use group solutions for group problems. Report serious issues to the right people. I'm not saying run to your supervisor anytime a small issue arises, but make sure that if it is a serious issue, that it does get escalated correctly. And don't ignore issues and hope they go away. Chances are they'll only get worse. So that being said, you want to make sure that you're actively creating a culture of respect. The first thing you want to do is you want to establish clear standards at the top. Evaluate your department's way of doing things and see if there's anything in its practices that provide breeding ground for incivility. If so, change those practices. Make sure that you are consistent with addressing incivility issues, and probably the most important one is to really just lead by example. Following along closely to that, you want to make sure that you're hiring wisely. Create a pleasant and an ethical work environment by carefully choosing personalities who will enhance the organizational culture. Anytime someone has impressive credentials and experience, it's really easy to want to jump on them simply because they maybe won't need as much training or development in the position. But just because they have those impressive credentials does not mean that the person is going to be the best cultural fit. And so you really need to weigh your options appropriately, because you can always train for specific tasks, but it's difficult to change someone's personalities. And make sure right from the get-go that you do set expectations during orientation and then enforce them and follow through. Really the driving force behind creating a culture of respect is to communicate, train, and coach those behaviors to your staff. Change people's attitudes about civility. Rudeness does run rampant in society. Help your team to understand the importance of civil behaviors in the workplace. Help provide specific skills to your team. How do you properly greet someone? What do you do in the face of conflict? And be consistent with feedback. A good coach will reinforce positive behavior and will correct negative behaviors as soon as they arise. I know we just discussed it, but really just making sure that you are rewarding or reinforcing the civil behavior, it can go a long way. Encourage stress management, active listening, and conflict resolution skills with your teams. And also make sure that you're open to feedback from your employees. If someone brings an issue or an idea to increase civility, don't disregard it. This will absolutely help your employees buy in to the idea of having a civil culture. They'll feel valued and will be more willing to adopt the culture of respect. And just keep the lines of communication open. Have an open discussion with your employees and have them help define civil behavior within your department and organization. Some examples of some definitions of civil behavior are to avoid sarcasm, put downs, and offensive humor. Listen attentively with eye contact. Watch body language or personal space. Apologize when in the wrong, even if it's difficult. I know that it's hard to swallow that pill at times and really take ownership of admitting to something when you're wrong, but it shows a tremendous amount of personal growth. Also, respect your coworkers' stuff, like their workspace, tools, or food in the fridge. And finally, make sure you're giving each other positive reinforcement. So you want to make sure that you're always communicating with civility. Remember those pleasantries. I know we've said it probably 3 or 4 times now, but a morning hello really goes a long way in having someone feel valued. Don't interrupt the individual. Ask if they have time to talk. Be open-minded to what they say. Say what you mean. Talk to people, but not about them. Be aware of your tone and volume. If you look at the chart on the right side, when people talk to us, we really only absorb 7% of what they're saying through the words that they use. But 55% of the meaning from their body gestures are, we derive 55% of the meaning from their body gestures and posture and physical clues, and 38% from the tone and inflection of the words they present. So really it's not what you say, but it's how you say it. So keep that in mind. And we'll end up our training today really by just having a kind of a checklist of things that you can look for to gauge whether or not you are working in a collaborative workplace and have a culture of respect. Does top management emphasize the importance of collaboration? Leadership groups actually function as teams. There's no antagonistic interdepartment rivalries. Managers encourage communication with other departments and functions. Managers regularly solicit input from employees. Employees clearly understand and focus on common goals. Coworkers help one another with projects and problems. Coworkers share information without being told to do so. And conflicts are resolved through discussion and problem solving. People enjoy spending time together. The atmosphere feels relaxed, friendly, and productive. That last one is probably your biggest indicator of that cultural feel, I guess. You always know when you walk into a toxic environment because you can cut the tension with a knife, whether it's intended or not. So really just kind of keeping in mind some of those things that show or are reflected in a healthy culture of respect gives you a good indication that things are going well. We'll finish up. I've got to give some credit where credit's due. I did not get this information on my own. And other than that, we are all done. So thank you for listening.